Hello, I'm Pratap Chillakanti. First of all, my apologies for not being able to come to Paris to present this paper. It was because of some unavoidable family circumstances. I could not reach there on time. Hence, we recorded this in my office, and we are sending the video file and also a link. Thank you for Jan for giving me an opportunity to present this paper at the TSOS workshop at PSD 2012. So the topic that I'm going to be presenting today is secure collaboration in onboarding companies. This is a very interesting topic to me. I have worked on onboarding projects in the industry, and I have noted down some observations, if you will, in the context of addressing security issues. Here we go. My topic is secure collaboration in onboarding companies. I am a PhD student at Middlesex University, and I also happen to be the CEO of my own company, Lensu, which is a collaborative learning platform company. I would like all of you to please email me any questions, comments, and suggestions that you may have on my paper. I would certainly appreciate that. The topics that I'm going to cover today are: first, I'm going to lay out a business scenario for you in the context of onboarding. Then we will understand what the security challenges are. Since my focus is on applying the concepts of self-organization to address security issues in onboarding, we will try to understand what self-organization is briefly. And then I'm going to introduce the concepts of security touch points. This is how we are going to understand and address the security issues in onboarding. At this point, we are ready to give you an overview of a collaboration security model. One of the key aspects of this research is the idea of managing access through community voting scheme, if you will. So I'm going to address some elements of community-driven access management. And then we will address some issues in the context of collaboration roles and trust relationships and security touch points, how they are all coming into play to address security in onboarding. I will wrap up the presentation with an example that shows how community trust comes into play to address access management. I will summarize the presentation and then briefly lay out the ongoing research that I am conducting. So here is a business scenario. In general, you have a company which decides to acquire some other company. Now, in the context of onboarding, we have to onboard the people of the acquired company. We have to onboard the processes and, of course, the technologies. There is some kind of an assimilation that takes place in the context of people, processes, and technologies. To deal with this onboarding, the teams, both from company A and company B, the acquiring company and the acquired company, they come from a variety of disciplines. You have people from engineering, you have marketing, sales, customer support, and of course legal. So here is a typical case of an inter-enterprise collaboration. Please notice that I still call this an inter-enterprise as opposed to intra-enterprise because the acquired company is still not completely assimilated. However, this type of inter-enterprise collaboration is slightly different with its own nuance than compared to a typical inter-enterprise collaboration that we are familiar with, where a company collaborates with its partners and vendors and so on. And I feel that there are some security challenges in this context of an inter-enterprise collaboration. So the picture depicts here how this collaboration team is coming into play. The people, processes, customers, partners, all of these things need to be assimilated into the enterprise A. One of the interesting things that I have observed in this context is enterprise A puts together a very dynamic virtual team. They come together, they take care of the assimilation of company B into company A, and then they go away. That means these roles tend to be transient. So that is the business scenario. So what are the security challenges then? We are all familiar with the challenges of collaboration. Bottom line is who gets access to what at what time is what we address in a collaboration context. But here are some challenges from an onboarding perspective. Number one, we have a global virtual and transient team, and these are the challenges that this team faces. They need to understand the end-to-end business process of acquisition and the process of partner onboarding. So partner onboarding is if the acquired companies they have the channel partners, how would we onboard them? Second thing that they face is they need to establish a common framework where they need to define the processes, methods, and tools that this virtual team is going to use for the duration of the onboarding and the context of the current acquisition. The other security challenge which I think must be addressed in onboarding is this notion of the security role. So it is not clear to me, at least at this point, what the security semantics must be for this transient collaboration role. It's activated for onboarding and deactivated when complete. So we'll delve on it further along the road. It's also not clear how the collaboration security must be managed when people from both organizations need access to each other's information assets. This is important because if you really pay close attention to what I'm saying here is people of company B, they are employees of company A, but not quite assimilated. Because the assimilation is not over, can we still treat them with the same trust levels as we would have when we are dealing with the people of our own company? I think the trust management must be addressed in a slightly different perspective in the context of onboarding. The entire issue of security management that needs to be reconciled between the two companies, because the acquired company may have its own management framework and the company which is acquiring has its own framework. We need to reconcile those things. So, and we have to formally define what the collaboration security is when the onboarding is triggered. And we should not forget that we should specify very clearly what the security management process is for end-of-life activities when the virtual team is disbanded after the acquisition is complete. I myself have noticed in the industry that after the acquisition is complete, even when the teams are disbanded, all the data that is part of that onboarding is still available to these employees who move on to other groups. Last but not least, we should also worry about the shared document security, because in the context of onboarding, there are multiple documents that tend to be shared, and not all parts of the document must be made available to everybody on the team. There are different sections of the document that are pertinent to, let's say, marketing. Only marketing guys should have access to that. But I have seen many breaches in that area as well. And of course, we should not forget social network security. In the context of social network paradigms, leakage of information and private data and private information is prevalent, and we should somehow address that in a proper way. Based on my literature survey, what I have noticed is that self-organization and community-driven trust models, they help address these challenges in the context of onboarding. So let me briefly touch upon what self-organization means. Okay? As some of the papers pointed out, you could find them in the references in my paper. The essence of any self-organized system is that the dynamics and the interaction among its components increase the inherent order in the system without any external stimulus and control. This concept has been applied to understand the issue of thwarting malicious access in networks. The same principle has been applied to pervasive computing, where you see large amounts of data, and in understanding data security through knowledge networks. And it has also been used for node level security management in mobile and ad hoc networks. The key characteristics of self-organized systems seem to be no centralized control. There seems to be some cooperation and communication amongst the individual elements. There is the notion of a feedback loop with knowledge sharing, and the organization of the system grows automatically without the intervention and guidance from any external source. Now, I do want to present a working definition of a self-organized secure collaboration system. So what we mean by that is, this is a system where the security organization grows dynamically through information sharing among the elements in the system. I also need to introduce here the notion of a security touch point, which is so relevant to what we are proposing. In essence, it is nothing but an interface where there is scope for data and message exchange. So these points, these security touch points, are those features of the interface which are susceptible to security breaches. As a result, we have to be a little bit more cautious in terms of addressing security at those interfaces, so as to protect the interface and the overall collaboration system. In my other paper, which is mentioned in the references, I go into more details about security touch points in the context of collaboration. On the left of this slide, what you see is the security touch points in collaboration environment encompass the data exchanges that would happen, the configuration enablers. These are the configuration files that are set up in the IT systems. The administration enablers, the structured input capture. This is where the SQL injection attacks happen, for example. Remote method invocation queries, when you have database queries, that's another interface where you have to address security, and so on. Please refer to my other paper mentioned in the references for a more detailed description of that. On the right, what you see there is collaboration security is addressed in the context of three key elements: coordination, communication, and cooperation. Now, we all know that we use these three terms in a very interchangeable way in the context of collaboration. However, there are some subtle differences between the three of them. So when you talk about collaboration security, you have to be precise in terms of coming up with the right model to address these three facets of collaboration. For the subtle differences between these three elements, please refer to my paper. What I believe is we should address security across all these three dimensions in a systematic way. So here is a collaboration security model where what we are proposing is, number one, we have to realize that there is no a priori knowledge about the security processes, people, security roles, and the tools that will be assimilated as part of the onboarding. That in itself kind of poses a challenge to predetermine, administer, and operationally manage all aspects of security. This justifies the concept of structured organization and self-organization, if you will. Second, the notion of security touchpoints clearly identifies the various interfaces in the environment where there is potential for data and message exchanges. Another aspect of a collaboration security model. Number 3, we should address the 3 C's of collaboration, because we show that by addressing security across those 3 dimensions, we are able to identify the security touch points, which would then lead us to implementing the right security mechanisms. Number 4, we also think that community-driven access management is a must in such an onboarding context. So let's understand what community-driven access management is. Number 1, it's based on trust relationships. So we should establish some kind of a relationship between the onboarding collaboration roles and the content on which these roles operate. We have the concept of voting by the community, which is the primary group associated with the content. We should also include both positive and negative feedback that results in validations and adjustments in the roles and trust relationships. So to drive the onboarding and to manage security, we begin with what is known as an integration template, because this is the template that drives all the collaboration security activities. So an integration template essentially is some kind of a framework, if you will, which addresses product and technology angle, sales and marketing angle, professional services, customers, employees, and so on, as you see in the table. Now we use this as a guideline, and then we also keep track of the primary milestones of onboarding. Number 1, there is a term sheet. Number 2, there's an announcement made that the company is in the process of being acquired or acquired. And number 3, there's a legal close. Okay. So as we go through these steps in the context of an integration template, the team composition changes till we reach the point of a legal close. Now what the recommendation we give is that the collaboration roles must be activated and deactivated throughout this acquisition life cycle. So from a secure collaboration perspective, the trust relationship must be defined between the collaboration roles. So here are some of the trust relationships that we have identified in the context of onboarding. Number 1, you have the intra-company peer-to-peer trust. You also have the intra-company trust between peers of the same organization. You have the inter-company peer-to-peer trust in the context of the same functional unit. And then you have inter-company peer-to-peer trust between companies at the organization level. One other trust that we like to add to this model is the notion of a community trust. So here is an example of a community trust. The term itself is quite self-explanatory. Somebody is trying to access some resource for which they do not have access. The community is going to vote upon it, whether to grant access or not grant access. But in the context of onboarding community trust, we envision it to be implemented in a way that is reflected in these examples. So here is an employee E1 of company A. He has a collaboration role CR1 at the start time T0. Now at some future point of time T1, the collaboration role is deactivated, and then E1 is attempting to access some information in the collaboration repository. Now operationally, assuming the security management framework has been set up in the beginning of the collaboration lifecycle for onboarding, operationally access is denied because the collaboration role is now deactivated. So when the system goes and checks for that collaboration role, is it active or inactive, it shows that it has been deactivated, the access is denied. However, in our model, at this point of time, using the community trust algorithm, events request may be evaluated and access either granted or denied. How that is done is explained in the paper. Please refer to that. Now here is another example of community trust. On the left, what you see is a table which shows the employees, the company to which they belong to, the enterprise role that they play, and the collaboration role that they have been assigned to, and what content domain they have access to. On the right, you see the trust relationships between these employees and why they have that trust relationship. For example, if you take the very first one, trust relationship between Bob and Sarah, there's a relationship there because they both have responsibility for finance domain. Similarly, if you take trust relationship between John and Sarah at the bottom, they both belong to the same committee. That's another type of trust relationship. Now, I would like you to ponder the following scenario. John in company C2 would like to access the finance data. So if you look at John, company C2, that is the last but one row from the bottom, he is in company C2 and his collaboration role, of course, is legal, and he only has access to content domain related to legal. But here he's trying to access finance data. So how would you resolve this in a community-based trust model? I do explain that in my paper with some level of detail. In essence, what John does is John goes to Sarah because they both have a trust relationship. They belong to the same community. Now, Sarah then belongs to a collaboration role community where you have the finance community in the collaboration. Based on Sarah's sponsorship of John and based on the community voting between Sarah and Bob, access to John is either denied or granted. So in summary, what this paper has demonstrated is that onboarding has its own nuance of collaboration security, because the acquired company's employees, on one hand, there's a higher level of trust for them, but on the other hand, they are not quite there yet. At the same time, they cannot be treated as partners and vendors where they have a lower level degree of trust. We discussed the security challenges in onboarding. We presented the justification for self-organization and trust models for collaboration security. And we showcased the notions of structured organization, which is essentially self-organization, the security touch points and the 3 C's of collaboration, and of course the community-driven access management. These are the 4 pillars, if you will, of collaboration security in onboarding. And we have also illustrated the use of community-driven access management. Our ongoing research, we are focusing on a comprehensive collaboration security model, which we hope to complete in the next 2 to 3 months and present our findings. We are also exploring the modeling of trust relationship between applications, business processes, etc., associated with onboarding. I also firmly believe that models that are proposed in the literature, they are a little bit lacking in terms of addressing change management issues. There are models which are very esoteric, very elegant in theory, but the practical administration of those models poses a variety of challenges in the industry. So what my focus is for this research is to also address change management in the context of secure collaboration and onboarding. Last but not least, I am also going to define metrics for our collaboration security model to make it a complete work product. Thank you. And as I said in the beginning, please assimilate what I have presented and shoot your questions my way. You can email me, you can call me if necessary. but please give your comments, suggestions, and points to ponder. Thank you.